As you may have guessed by the slide, your documentation, and other context clues, I'm Jonathan Popham. This is an introduction to Polymer and web components. How many of you know what web components is? Any idea? All right, this number is growing. How many of you know anything about Polymer? How many of you follow cricket in Australia? Okay, about the same number of people that know about web components. I'm seeing some correlations here. How many people like to raise their hands? Okay, I see the don't like to raise their hands group, so I'll keep you in mind. That'll be part of my sampling bias. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started then. I see some people trickling in the back. The doors will lock behind you in 2 minutes, so get comfortable. We'll give a big thanks to Devnexus for inviting me to come out here to do this. This is my first time that I've had the pleasure of taking part in this event, but it's my understanding it's been going on since 2004, so that's pretty incredible that they've been keeping this going for more than 10 years. So, I got a few more people. It's okay, we're not on schedule. I'm just kidding, you're fine, you're fine. All right, so I guess I'll jump in. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. This is time for my hat dance. So I was first the organizer for Google Developer Group Atlanta. I've been doing that for a few years. That's where I've gotten all the Polymer stuff from. A lot of my front-end development experience has really come in handy with that. I'm the president of a hackerspace called Freeside Atlanta. It's located in a scary warehouse in the West End. It's where we keep 3D printers and weird people. It's a great place to go to if you're a lunatic. I also am a user interface developer at ADP. It's a small business. You may not have heard of it. Unless you use payroll or checks or anything like that, then you're welcome. So why am I doing this? The simple part about it is I do this for fun. I steal my philosophy from Linus Torvalds. He says, first, you go through the first phase, which is that you do something for survival. Second, you do it to establish or maintain some kind of social order. Third, people do things just for fun. And so something that's fun or entertaining is intrinsically challenging and interesting. And so I'm not doing this because I need to do it because I want to stay alive or because I've got some secret world order that I'm trying to establish by bringing all of you here and indoctrinating you into Polymer and web components. It's even more than that. I enjoy those things. I hope that you enjoy them too. So the next part, this is the slightly interactive part. Who are you guys? I want everyone in the room right now to stand up out of your chairs, even the people that don't like to raise their hands. All of you, every single one of you, every single person right now. Okay, I want you to tell the people that are next to you what your name is and one thing that you think is fun. In life, it could be anything. That means you too, Wojo. Okay. You can sit back down if you want. If you want. Thank you very much. Man, that's a power rush. Anyway, so let's get started. Now that I have all of your names memorized, I feel like I can address every single one of you as an individual. So today, I want you to brace yourselves because we're about to reach the singularity moment for web design and web development. So Polymer project is, this isn't the chemical one. This is a library. It's more of an opinion than it is about anything else. Polymer is a project that started on the Chrome team at Google that is in a feedback loop with the standards bodies, W3C, in order to figure out what is next for the internet. So the name is based off of the chemical polymers because, like PVC or PEP, on a sense, in a high level, it's all the same. They're all modular components that come together to make something larger than themselves. So some of the libraries that are out there right now, Polymer is the first one. They made something originally that was called Platform.js. The name of it is now changed to WebComponents.js. This we'll go into more detail about later. Xtags is Mozilla's project. They've been working with Google and the Polymer team. And there's a fairly recent addition called bosonic, like the Higgs boson particle. Similar to the Polymer thing, you get it. So bosonic is different in Polymer and Xtags in that it's not really setting out to create a vision for the future because Polymer is already doing that. Xtags is already helping with that. Bosonic is trying to bring these future technologies to old, disgusting web browsers. I mean, old legacy web browsers like IE. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to be talking about Polymer mostly. We're going to be spending some time talking about web components in general. I'll touch briefly on the end about materials design, which is part of the new design paradigm that goes along with this new vision. Kind of what the landscape is going to look like in the next few years, what people are trying to come up with. And I'm going to make sure that you get at least a high-level understanding of what the shadow DOM is. Does anyone know what the shadow DOM is? Does anyone really know what the shadow DOM is? It's okay, I don't either. They really just found me on the street this morning, so I don't really know why I'm even here. But so Polymer was in beta for quite some time. Google I/O last year, it was announced that it was going to be coming out of beta. So it works on the latest 2 versions of all the evergreen browsers. So that includes these 5 up here: Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, Opera. Important note about IE is that all of the new standards are under review right now. So they were totally out, now they're under review. Safari has a little ways to go. We'll talk about that more soon. So the compatibility for everything that we get to do with web components comes from polyfills from the webcomponents.js library. So what is Polymer? A lot of people have the misconception that Polymer is some kind of new programming language or it's a model view controller framework like Angular. That's not the case. Polymer is an opinion. It's a way that you can take encapsulated components and you can put them all together to make something bigger. Y'all tracking me? Are we good so far? All right, cool. So they're kind of like Lego bricks. So this is the native support. I just used the shadow DOM as an example because the shadow DOM is really critical if you're going to be doing web components for real. So this is what the native stuff looks like. As you can see, Chrome is the only version that's really there. Opera is going to be coming out with its upcoming releases. So the native support is terrible. So that brings us to webcomponents.js. Originally, it was called platform.js, which was developed by the Polymer team. But now it's been opened up, and it's been put on webcomponents.org. So this is a shared resource. It was already part of an open source project, but now it's part of a larger community. It's not just part of Polymer anymore. And so what this does is that this gives us all of this new browser support. It's a polyfill, which means that this JavaScript library adds in things like model-driven views, the shadow DOM, templates, HTML imports, which are all the things we're going to be talking about, I promise, that make web components happen. Because these things aren't built into the vanilla browser. So if you can take a look at my terrible animation here, it's terrible because it doesn't move. We start with whatever your layer is on your evergreen browser. So this is whatever your support is. Generally, it's not very much unless it's Chrome. Then you're going to have your polyfill layer, which is the web components. That's going to give you the model-driven views. It's going to give you the shadow DOM. It's going to give you templates. Then you're going to have Polymer, which is your sugaring layer. We'll talk about sugaring syntax more. Right now, we're just going over what we're going to be talking about. Core elements, which are the things like the XHR, AJAX requests, all the other services that you'll have in Polymer. The paper elements, which are the things that you actually use for your user interface, like buttons, cards. Then you have, on the highest level, you have your application layer. So what actually have you made with all of these things? So there's polyfills they've played with for mutation observers, so you can see when there's something that changes. Pointer events, web animations, and the other stuff that we already talked about. So these are the new things that are in the standards so far. This has changed. because they originally had templates, custom elements, shadow DOM, imports, and decorators. Decorators never really happened. That was taken off. So it's important to consider that Polymer is not the end-all, be-all. In the terms that, like, Polymer's main goal is to make itself not exist, because Polymer is a vision for the future on what should be natively included in web browsers. So if Polymer does its job, then all of the things that Polymer does will be refined. We'll find the best things, and then those things will become the native support, and then we'll be able to get rid of these lower levels. So templates. Anyone know what templates are? HTML templates? Okay, cool. All right, so templates are basically pages within a page, not exactly like an iframe because they're inert. So this is a bit of HTML markup that you're going to have saved somewhere. This will be actually the guts of what your custom elements will look like. And they'll not be, until they're called on, they will remain inert. And so they'll remain nice and safe inside of the shadow DOM, ready for you to use them. You have custom elements. Anybody know custom elements? This is a little bit more popular. Angular has this, React has this. So custom elements, you can extend elements that are pre-existing. So you can say have a button element, and you can extend that into maybe a fancy button, and you could have some extra features that you see on it. You have the shadow DOM, which is a way of the real way that you encapsulate things. So inside, inside of your DOM, you'll have a shadow host or a shadow root inside of that. So first shadow host, then a shadow root, and then you have all this nice encapsulated stuff. So the shadow DOM is something that can protect everything else for it. So it makes things more reliable, because if you have styles that are applied to something with a certain class or ID, if that same class or ID is used within the shadow DOM, nothing's going to happen. It's going to be totally separate. So imports are what make all of these, or the way that you get all of these new functionality. So getting the web components library, getting the Polymer library, getting all that JavaScript stuff as part of your browser, use the HTML import tag. It looks a lot like a link tag. You put it in your head with all of the rest of your meta tag stuff. And what that does is it just pulls something in and it plants it on your browser. So now it works like it was just in your browser the whole time. So all of these different items that I've listed to you are all examples of web component libraries. But each one of them will work individually, and any web component, which will be a custom element, you can use those by themselves. You don't have to use Polymer. You can use WebKit. You can use which is the native web component stuff. You can use Polymer. You can use Xtags. You can use Bosonic. You can do any of that stuff. You can just use one. You can just use Shadow DOM if you want. So this goes into more about the feedback loop. So Shadow DOM. It is definitely a tree of DOM nodes. We definitely have that figured out. It is maybe the magical all tree from Norse mythology, but that's non-normative currently. So you can create a shadow DOM by calling the create shadow root method, and then then that just takes a place like inside of your elements. It creates an element inside of your DOM that will be encapsulated. So you don't have to have a whole encapsulated DOM. You can just have these nodes inside of it. So this is what I'm talking about with the shadow DOM. This is actually what it looks like. So you would have your document, which will have all the rest of your divs, spans, whatever, and then each one of these is just like a sub-element. And this isn't anything like fancy or crazy. I'm just talking about like unordered lists. I'm talking about divs. I'm talking about spans. I'm talking about that kind of stuff. So you have a shadow host first, which is inert. Does not matter what text or anything that you put inside of your shadow host. The shadow host is just a way that you can separate your shadow root, which is your first encapsulated part, from everything else. So yeah, the shadow DOM keeps styles from bleeding. So if you had something with two things that had the same class name, same ID, you could put these all in your DOM. If they're inside of shadow DOM, then it doesn't matter. You can do that. So they're encapsulated from the rest of the document. This is a confusing diagram of what the shadow DOM looks like. Does this immediately explain the shadow DOM to anyone? I didn't think so. Okay, so all this really says is that inside of your regular, so this is just your DOM. This would just be like individual div elements, and then you can have these shadow nodes that are inside of this. And so this encapsulation works by, say that I had this host right here. All of the nodes that are underneath that will be totally encapsulating that. So I can call this, and I can actually get all of the children out of this shadow host without having to do any of the stuff inside of this. And we'll get more to that when we start talking about declarative event mapping. Okay, so this is some unformatted code on what actually it looks like to create a shadow host. So in your JavaScript, you just create a host variable, use query selector to make host, you make a root variable that creates your shadow root, then you give your content name, and you can set your attribute to be whatever. It can be an h1, it can be h2, it can be a div, a span, doesn't matter. And then you can use the append child to put whatever content that you have that you want to encapsulate underneath that. So this is just how you would create a shadow. You don't have to do this. You can just use the pre-existing stuff. But if you want to make all that, then you can do it. And then whenever you make that, then you can call it like this. So you would just use the ID host, and then whatever is in this top layer would be your shadow host. And so anything that was a child of this h1 would work. So what do we really do with this? So we can do some cool stuff like declarative event mapping. So an example of declarative event mapping is, okay, so anyone in the room ever have some like horrible legacy code that they're not allowed to touch, and you're expected to do all this cool stuff on the front end without actually seeing what's going on in the back end? Has anybody had to deal with gross code ever? Wow, where do you guys work? Never mind. But you can use this event mapping to say take whatever your tag names are, and then you can apply all of this stuff to whatever existing elements that you have. So you can use the extend element attribute, or you can apply things with data binding to all of the different tags of that kind. So this is also the preferred method for doing event mapping. So this is really the heart of custom elements. So yeah, really great if you ever have to deal with legacy code. You need to add a feature, but you can't see what's going on in the back end. So custom elements. I think that y'all kind of get this. We've already talked about the extend element a little bit, but this is the markup for what that would look like. So you can take pre-existing HTML elements, and then you can use this function to extend them to something else. So the name would be what the name of your custom element would be. So anytime that you call just with an open tag and a close tag, fancy button, then whatever you have inside of this, whatever you define here, you'd have a template inside of here, and whatever you define between this and this would give you whatever you call a fancy button, it would give you whatever's inside of that. All right, templates. A template is a way of, it's really like the house for all this code to live inside of your shadow DOM. So your template is where this code will stay until it's called on. It's totally inert unless you actually call it. So this is what you need to make a custom element. So we'll get to the part, all this stuff will start piling up. This is the HTML import. We went over this some. This is really self-explanatory to me. You just call this in your meta tag, and you import whatever dependencies you need. In this case, use Bower. Most of the time, you're going to want to use Bower to do your dependencies management. Anybody know Bower? We good with Bower? All right, excellent. Okay. You're going to like Polymer because you use it all the time. If you get Bower, you can install all of your dependencies recursively. And using Bower with the HTML import tag, you can get everything that you need for any web component library. So if I wanted to install something off of customelements.io, for example, I would just need to call whatever the parent project was, and then it would go down and grab all of the things that I need to make the project run. So yeah, it's just another kind of link type. So data binding. Two-way data binding is a way that you can say, let's say that we have something, use the double mustache syntax for this. You might have seen that before. You can just list that as an ID or a class name, and then you can plug that in anywhere you want, and it'll work. So the two-way data binding really creates something called model-driven views. Model-driven views are a way that if you change your model, if you change your code, it at the same time will change whatever is in your view. So an example of this data binding would be, we have this name tag right here. And the owner of this name tag is Raphael. If we came back later and used later in our document, and we used the query selector to change this to June, then this would update everywhere that this was used. So it's just really super powerful stuff, because you can just put this in anywhere in your document, and then after that you can just change everything. So when I'm talking about declarative event mapping, what I mean to say is that you can totally control your DOM with markup. That's pretty powerful stuff. You don't have to do any kind of imperative stuff. You can also do imperative event mapping, where you actually put it in your JavaScript, but not necessary. So what does Polymer really do? So the kind of stuff that I've been telling you about has been really about webcomponents.js, which is the platform layer that everything is built on top of. So Polymer is the sugaring layer. Are y'all familiar with sugaring syntax? You know about that? Some people? Okay, cool. It's just a way to make things more palatable. So we're able to extend all this stuff with sugaring layers. So if we had, for example, a Google Maps tag, and we wanted to, I don't know, we had an open Google Maps, closed Google Maps, we could have everything that was in all the children, all of the encapsulated stuff for free, just from calling the Google Maps tag itself. Here's an example. So on the left, this is just a screenshot of a random website, Twitter. And then on the right is what Google Maps looks like now. We can call Google Maps with Polymer, and that is literally everything you have to do to have a Google Maps element on your page. That's it. That's all the code. Well, except for your document declaration and all that stuff. You have to tell your browser that you're feeding it HTML. But other than that, you don't have to deal with any of this stuff. They call this div soup. It's just div, 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 div. That's very difficult to understand. And so when we say sugaring syntax, what we mean to say is that it makes things more palatable for a coder, for us, for the people that are in this room. You don't have to deal with this crap. You can just get things that make sense, that are semantic, that you understand. So what does this stuff look like together? So first we would have our script source at the top. That would be what our head looks like. You get all your imports. And then we can start defining custom elements. So I can list whatever my element name is. In this case, I use NoScript, which is just to tell my browser that you don't need to pull any of the JavaScript out of here. Then we have our template, which is where all this is going to be kept. And then inside the hello from xfoo, that was actually what my content is going to look like. So anywhere that I have everything else, all the dependencies and everything installed to make this work, anytime that I call xfoo on my page with the open and close tag, then you will see the text hello from xfoo inside of an h1. Ooh, So yeah, that's the basic file structure. Okay, so since 75 minutes is an extremely long time, y'all need to stand up one more time. I'm serious. This is, just get up again. Soon, so we're going to have a quiz section. I didn't tell you there's going to be a test, but there's about to be a test. You will receive 1 Jonathan point per correct answer. I can promise you with enough Jonathan points, you'll be well on your way to fantastic prizes beyond your wildest dreams. Are y'all ready? You can sit back down if you want. You feel good? You feel stretched? You can get it all out. Oh, man. Ooh. All right, cool. So, question 1. The way this is going to work, by the way, is that the first person that can give me a correct answer will receive a point, which will be redeemable for a prize, yes, a prize, at the end of this presentation. So don't try and rush the stage and do anything like that. So y'all ready? Okay, you're not ready. Well, I'll just wait here. I'm just kidding. All right. So who can tell me what are the 3 stages of Linus's law?
Survival, social life, entertainment.
1 Jonathan point to you, sir. That is correct. Because if it's not fun, then why would you do it? Okay, we got another one. So you're going to come see me after the presentation is over. All right. Here's another one. This is a very difficult one. What do you like to do for fun? Yes, who said sleep? This gentleman right here. That's it. Please approach me. Personally, I like to play Frisbee, and I also like to install things from my terminal with the verbose tag, so it looks like I'm a really serious hacker. Okay, this is actually a hard question, maybe. What's the main alternative to declarative event mapping? Div soup. That's good. That's a good guess. I didn't really go over it much because it's not considered best practice, but imperative event mapping. Who was the first answer? Div soup? Okay, you're going to get it for div soup, for your bravery, mainly for your bravery, but also for div soup. So yes, imperative event mapping is whenever you actually define this inside of your JavaScript. So you can see at the bottom here where it says, if y'all can y'all read that? Anybody? Can y'all read that in the back? It says document.body.appendChild EL. So this is how you would do it. So you would add it in actually in the script. See, this at the top, this is part of my template, and then inside of another template, and then this down here is how you do it. It's kind of gross, and then whenever you call this name tag John, then all the stuff will work, but it's not considered a best practice, so I'm not going to go into too much. All right, this one is a kind of off-the-wall question. I'll be pleasantly surprised if I can get a good answer for this. Who are the 5 best rappers in the world? Yes, sir, that is correct. The 5 best rappers in the world are Dylon, 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 and Dylon. Thank you very much for watching The Chappelle Show. Okay, so let's say that we actually wanted to use Polymer and we didn't just want to have some hippie guy in the front and tell us all about what it would be like. You can use this command in Bower to install it via npm. So this will just create just a directory that has all of the Polymer elements in it. You can kind of see it and play with it a little bit, but it's not really, an awesome way to deal with it. This just will install the platform for you. You'll still need to do the set up your Bower init and do all the Bower manifest stuff. So what is cool is the designer. This is something that you can actually play with right now, and then you can use this to drag and drop elements. Then you kind of get an understanding also. There's this view, which is your view, and then you can click over, and then there's also a model on the other side. This will give you a list of all of your DOM nodes on the side. Yeah, and this is, nope, I'm not going to do it. There we go. This is all of what your code would look like. This is kind of gross Polymer because I just drag and drop stuff. You save stuff via GitHub gists. So if you have a GitHub account, whenever you hit the save button up there, it will send the last, whatever this string is of characters, the really gross thing down here, just that hash. If you save that, you can plug that into any instance of the designer, and it will give you your work. So basically, it just saves that hash. So if you're feeling hacky, you can actually not just go to the designer's website and use it. You can install it on your computer. And something's cool about the designer is that the designer itself is actually a custom element. So what that means is that if you have the designer as one of your components in this palette on the side, you can actually drag it inside of the designer recursively forever, as many times as you want. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about encapsulation. The true message of encapsulation, the take-home from encapsulation, is that you can put this stuff anywhere that you want, even inside of itself, on other pages. Lots of websites use polyfills already. The Polymer is not super ready for production. They're out of beta, but there's still a lot of weird stuff that you have to deal with. But you can use polyfills period anywhere. If you just because I told you that they can just be used individually. So for example, GitHub, for their date stuff, they use polyfill for that. So yeah, this is if you decide to install the designer the other way, you just want to fire it up with a local server. For some reason on GitHub, everyone complains about how come they downloaded all these packages and they don't work. You have to serve them. So most people have Python installed. I'm assuming if you have Bower that you have npm installed, but for some reason if that doesn't work, the Python module simple HTTP server is also pretty quick and easy to do. And then your easy mode is actually just go to the designer itself, which you can find at this URL, and you'll also be able to get it from my slides online. If we have extra time, I'll play with it at the end. Let's see. There's some cool stuff that you can do. So component.kitchen is a great website. There's this one and another one that we'll talk about in a second. Component.kitchen is a repository, open source repository for custom elements. You can go on here, and they're all saved as Bower projects, and you can drag and drop them on your, not drag and drop, you can install all of them onto your page. So if you have, for example, the chessboard that is from Sigurd Fosing, I'm sorry if you're in the audience, your name is difficult to pronounce, you can use this just like it is, and you can put in all the positions of whatever your chess pieces are going to be, and you can load a live chessboard like that, and that's all you need. You don't have to have any of the other markup that tells you what styles that you have to do to get those colors, or what kind of JavaScript stuff that you have to do to make the moves, or to do the animations or the redraws. You get all that stuff for free out of the box. CustomElements.io is another open source repository. There's a lot of crossover, but I gotta say that component.kitchen has one of the best URLs known to man. So I continue to use both. Custom Elements is just a huge open source component repository. It's really slick and clean. You should check it out. Other notable Polymer stuff that you need to be looking into, Core Ajax. You can do XHR requests, and Core XHR, you can really do some more API stuff with JSON. I've had, personally, a challenging time getting all of the XHR and Ajax stuff to work correctly. However, one of my friends, he's a Google Developer Group organizer from Miami, Nelson, has gotten me into Swagger. Has anybody used Swagger for any of their API stuff? Apparently, Swagger really helps out with your API management for Polymer, so if you use Swagger, I'd definitely look into using it with Polymer. Also, Flexbox. Was anybody here for the Flexbox talk? Yeah, Flexbox. I still have the Flexbox 360. I haven't upgraded to the Flexbox One. But yeah, Flexbox is amazing. You can get all of the stuff from Flexbox in custom elements. So has anyone ever tried to center anything on an HTML page before? Yeah, it sucks a lot, doesn't it? It's like really like hacky and crappy to do that. You have to like do all this stuff with padding and putting in like PMGs and media queries and all this stuff. How about you don't have to do any of that crap with Polymer? You can just use Flexbox just like this, and whenever you do your markup, you can just put in horizontal to put something in the middle of the page, and then center justified to put that in like this center of the page. And so whenever you have something like that that's center justified, you can drag your window to any size, and it's totally responsive, and it'll move around, and it'll do all of that stuff that you want it to do, how it should behave. That's what the point of this is. The point of all this Polymer stuff is let's not look back at PHP and see how we did things 10 years ago and then try and like mold this whole world around the things that people used to do. The point is to say, how should this really work? And if something doesn't work inside of Polymer, you can put in a pull request, you can complain, you can show that it doesn't work, and then the standard will be changed. And you get to be involved with this feedback loop as developers where you get to put your input back into what the internet should be like, and then the people on the Polymer team actually are authors of the W3C conventions for all this stuff. Like Dmitry Glazkov from the Chrome team, or excuse me, from the Polymer team now, he's like the forefather of web components. And he's like the author of all this stuff, and you can tell him. And Eric Beidelman also, you can just send stuff to them, and then they'll say, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't do that. That's what happened to decorators. It didn't work out. They took it out. Other stuff that you can check out, if I use Yeoman scaffolding stuff, yeah, you can use Yeoman with Polymer. It's really great. You can set up your projects. It'll give you all like gulp, grunt, whatever you want to do, your dependency injection stuff. So yeah, check that out. YoPolymer, it's fantastic. Also check out Swagger.io if you want to do any kind of like real backend stuff. I'm still trying to learn more about how this will work with Polymer, but it's my understanding that it really helps out. Okay, so material design. So anybody do design? Have we got any UX people in here? All right, some. Okay, materials design is not exactly part of the Polymer project, but it's being used with the Polymer project. All of the Google websites that are using Polymer are also using materials design. So in the way that Google's future vision for markup is Polymer, their future vision for design is materials design. So they really go hand in hand together. So it's in Android L. So it's been in Android since, let's see, that was APK 20. So that was an experimental then, but it's already built into Polymer. So the paper elements, a lot of, when I showed you that graph, the stuff that's on the top, the actual elements that you use, how do I say that? Buttons, user interface type stuff, UX type stuff, all that's already materials, uses ink to do its coloration. It's already there. So this is an example of the Android Wear with the Android L preview. So it's all based off of how the user will interact with the device. Some of the new concepts that come in with material design, there's the Z-axis is introduced. A lot of you are familiar with the Z-axis from real life. We have a problem with our mobile devices and our design in general that we tend not to include the Z-axis at all. And if we do, it's just a really shoddy attempt. So what makes this different is that every materials design application has a global light source that you can put. And then you have relative distance for all of your elements. They occupy a place in the Z-axis. So if I have a button that's hovering over something else, however the global light source variable shines on this, it will cast a shadow and it will reflect wherever element moves. So can y'all read that? Man, this design is terrible. I can't believe this material design stuff. Anyway, this is from the style guide. I'll just read you what this says. So material is the metaphor. It's the unifying theory for the rationalized space. That doesn't make sense. Basically, material is a metaphor in the sense that they use paper and ink and things that you're actually familiar with to be able to do your animations and user events. You deal with tangible surfaces. You deal with something like when they say paper, it really is like paper. You can push it, you can open it, you can move it around. Whenever you use the ink animations, it looks like ink welling across the screen. So it doesn't really make sense or feel natural the way that we do a lot of user interaction stuff. So this kind of helps that. So you've got the Z-axis, which gives you all of your shadows, gives you dimensionality, which that's something that we're used to as humans. So also one of the other design principles is to have one unified design. My slides do not follow one unified design. I've had a lot of different stuff in here. My slide presentation has not been a great example of materials design, and these are pretty hard to read. However, in a well-designed application, there's one adaptive design. It's bold and intentional. You might notice in a lot of the Polymer stuff that the colors are like just explode, and that's on purpose. They want everything to have a purpose in the design. It wants to emphasize your actions and movement. So if you click a button, you want it to feel like you clicked a button. You want to feel like you touched something, then you interacted with it. Also, all the change is user-initiated. There's not things that are going to happen that you don't understand. If you affect the page in some way, you want to see that change happen. We'll have choreographed animations. You want everything to make sense. So in this example, I know you can't read the text, but this is an example of a canvas moving up across the screen, or what a user event would look like. So you can see that it's supposed to slide gently. There's supposed to be some kind of transition. And motion is going to provide meaning. That's one of the other important concepts, is that when something moves, this is going to explain it to you. Okay. So do y'all want to see like an actual Polymer app instead of just hearing all this like low-level stuff? All right, cool. Well, let's do that. I have one open. If I could see my mouse. I did praise the demo guys before I began this talk, so hopefully that'll go well. Oh, this is a designer, by the way. If y'all give me a second, I'm going to mirror these displays so I know what's going on. Y'all see that okay? Great. All right, we got some quizzes. More quizzes. Would y'all like to take a geography quiz, a food and drink quiz, a general knowledge quiz? Any of that sound good? Anybody? Thank you. All right, so you saw how that animation, how there's like the explosion there. That's what I mean from earlier when I was talking about how the motion provides the meaning. This is all centered around this. So this all uses material design, and this is all made with Polymer. So let's get started. So who can name a state in the United States that starts with the letter A? Alabama. One Jonathan point to you, sir. Select which landmark to American state pairings are correct. Las Vegas, is that in Arizona? No. Is Death Valley in California? Yes. Is Mount Rushmore in North Dakota? South Dakota, I think. We'll find out soon. Fort Knox is in Kentucky, right? Okay, when I click this, watch what happens. This is called ink. So this is going to well up, just like that. Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Also, this is just cool to me because if I hold it down and then release, it makes sense. So that's what it means when I say that the user initiates everything. All the changes on the page are user initiated. This is supposed to symbolize me holding this down. All right, let's see if we got it. 8 points. Who cares? Would you say that a person born in Lombardy is Italian? Yes, it is. Maybe. Absolutely. Anyone have any idea? This is really just an example of what these user interface elements are like. You don't have to really know the questions. Like this slider, just love it. Click it, it drops, changes size. Makes sense because whenever this is at its lowest state, it's empty. Whenever it's at its top state, it's filled. Whenever it's being selected, it's large. And whenever you don't need it, it shrinks. I have no idea. I remember hearing that the coastline of the United Kingdom was theoretically infinite because of all like the smaller channels. So I'm going to go with a large number. And I was incorrect. Do y'all care to finish this quiz? We can check out some other stuff. So yeah, this app was made for Google I/O last year. Well, they were wrong. Let's see. All right, how about the designer? Let's see if there's anything else that we need to grab in this presentation real quick. So yeah, we'll come back to the designer in the end. I just want to make sure I've got 7 slides left for this presentation, so I want to make sure that I do all of this before I get the demos out. So yeah, this is the big message that I want you to have, is that Web Components lets you create custom HTML elements. Do y'all get that? Are we good? Excellent. Well, yep, that's those slides. There's a couple of bonus ones. You'll come to that. We'll talk about that later. All right, let's see if we can make an app. All right, so that Topeka app that you just saw, We can actually make that right now. So this is an example. So this app is like on its own. Oh, demo gods. Yeah. So this itself is a custom element. This is the Topeka app that we just saw. Whoops. So we can pop over and take a look at what the markup for this looks like. So that's it. This is you could use even less than this. So first, here's my custom element. This is a large scale. I guess, well, first, here's the imports, which gives us all of these elements. This is where these resources come from. Next, we have this Polymer element. This is actual element definition. So we could change this to be anything. We could call this the Devnexus rules. And we gotta have all this stuff here. That's all for my Topeka app. That's it. Your template lives here. This will be inert until it's called on. There's not going to be any script, so we don't care about that. We save this, it becomes a gist, and it gives me this nice little hex key at the end. I can save that and use it somewhere else. So we can preview this. It pops up in another window. And this is actually the mobile version of the app that we were just looking at. Same thing. So each one of the elements that makes this up is something smaller. I hope that that's intuitive from the sense that it makes something up, that things that make things up are smaller than some of their parts. So we have things like, here's your avatar, this is background image. These are all their own individual things. We could use each one of these by itself without having to use the whole Topeka app. And then this kind of modularity continues, it gets even smaller. So like the core elements, we could have, let's get rid of some of this stuff. Here we go, palette. Say we want to do a drawer panel. Let's drag that out. Let's get some other stuff in here. How about we do a YouTube search app on the fly? Why not? Or whatever else we make. Components. Here we go. So we can drive in a search video. So it's got some cool stuff with actually like linking. So for the declarative event mapping stuff, I can actually drag in fields like a text field or say the speech mic, and I can connect this declaratively to the search function in the YouTube app itself. So if I have this button here, this button, let's see, yeah, you can use that. I guess, yes. Well, that looks like work. So if we get this, if you had your mic enabled and weren't afraid of NSA spying like I am, then you could use this connected with that to actually search inside of this YouTube element. All you have to do is just connect, you just have to plug them into each other, that's it. Same thing with any of this other stuff. The same thing with any of the inputs. Get text input here, you can put something in there. So for padding and stuff, or we could get say this this card element, just put that on top of it. You can move around. This becomes one new element now. We switch back over. This is an example of the model-driven views. We switch from, this is my model, that's my view. I changed my view, and that has also changed my model. So the code is persistently is updated every time. Let me see how much time I have left. Quite a while. Does anybody have any questions? Just in the middle, you can throw whatever out. What you got? Are things accessible in the Shadow DOM? Okay, so accessibility from the Shadow DOM. So the Shadow DOM doesn't cut you off from being able to use anything. It just cuts it off from styles seeing each other. One thing that you may not be able to see is if something in the shadow DOM has like child nodes, you can make it so you can't see that. You can do something called piercing when you pierce the shadow DOM, and you can actually connect things that are inside of the shadow DOM to other elements if you want to. But it's not exactly a security feature. It's mostly for style bleeding. Let's see. So yeah. So all of this is really to say Polymer is also not XML schema. It's not, this sugaring syntax, this markup is not the same thing as XML. It's more like jQuery for your DOM. You can really do DOM traversal with this stuff. This is some other stuff. Let's see. Yeah, this has been deprecated, but this is a better example of what the native stuff looks like. It doesn't really support very much. Your foundation layer, other higher level stuff. Let's see. We could do the single page. There's a single page app demo. So you can do single page applications. This is another example, Polymer app. Each one of these is numbered and then data bound in its ID to whatever this is. So this area right here, this is a card. This is a drawer panel. So this card has this text saved on it, and it has an ID that's data bound with the double mustache bracket syntax. And then each one of these will just jump over to whichever one they're bound to. So it looks like I ran short for my time. So if y'all have any questions or have anything that that you would like me to expound on further, I can go into it. We got questions? What we got? Mm-hmm. 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 Right, okay, so the question is, will having all of these components slow down page load time, more or less? Okay, so the cool thing about Polymer is that inside of your templates, all of that markup is just inert. Nothing happens to any of it unless it is being called, unless you have something that's actively calling it. So if you have several hundred components that are on your page, it would be the same as having like a giant web page. It would be no different than having the regular div markup like you're used to. But since they're not called on, it shouldn't affect your load time. You should be able to load relatively quickly. It doesn't matter how many components that you have loaded in. It just matters which ones you call. Does that matter? Does that answer your question? More or less? What else you got? Is it possible to lazy load some of the web components? That is a feature that has not rolled out, but that would be awesome. If you would like to put in a pull request for lazy loads, that would be excellent. If y'all have questions, you can. I think the easiest thing to do for the recording would be if you want to come up to this microphone. Otherwise, I'll just repeat your question. Anybody else? What you got? Right. Yes, it is. It is flat. So the designer is more of a tool for experimentation. There have the styles over here. So you can actually add to whatever. So each one of these fields, since this is a custom element, if you want to change any of your stuff to make it support the z-axis stuff from paper and from materials design, you can add this into the designer if you wanted to use that. But The designer is never intended to be a serious development tool, I think is the easy answer for that. So yes, you still can't do it. The designer doesn't support it.
You started off with Polymer being an opinion or a vision, yet we're looking at some very mechanical, tangible things here. What's the viability of using this stuff to build an app that's going to hit the public tomorrow?
Okay, so what's the viability of doing an app that's going to hit the public tomorrow? I think a great example of that would be Inbox. Or has anyone used Inbox on Google? Polymer, Google Web Toolkit. So there are production apps that are currently using Polymer. Also, the Polymer project website uses Polymer. I would still wait on it a little bit because there's so much stuff that gets changed. So for example, this is the third time that I've given a talk like this, but every time that I've done it, it's changed dramatically. So last November, platform.js, which was the original nomenclature for the web components JS, that was deprecated. A lot of the stuff they had gestures. They had this thing called Touch UI, that's gone. So there's just so many things that are changing until it gets, I would wait until it's settled a little bit. However, you're totally cleared to use web components right now. You can go run out of this room, stay in this room as a matter of fact, and you can use any of these web components on any web page. So full Polymer website, I would wait on it a little bit. Putting Polymer or web components on a website, totally would do it.
Does the materials design stuff play well with like Bootstrap and other things?
That's a great question. I haven't tried to use material design with Bootstrap. It's mostly built into Polymer. So for example, all of the CSS and all the style stuff is kind of baked into the markup. So we can use this stuff over here to change our markup. That's broken. That's fun. One second. There we go. So yeah, as you can see, like all of the style stuff is built in. There we go. Well, all right, great. That'll be fine. It'll be fine. All this is baked in, so I haven't used Bootstrap with this. Maybe. I guess you could work together with them if you wanted to, because it's just importing CSS. You can import any of this stuff onto a page and use it independently, so yes, I'm sure you could. Let's see, I hate to cut this short, but I don't think I have, unless there's any other questions, I'll keep fielding your questions for as long as the time allows.
Concerning where you would use the material design, is that something, it has a great deal of engineering, it's very attractive, but is it something that you would use general purpose for mobile applications, development of multiple platforms, development?
Yes. Yes, and in fact, yeah. Okay, so the question is, can you use material design on mobile applications? Is it here to stay, or is it just a fad? Is it just passing fancy sort of thing? It's being used on Android. If anybody is using Android L or Lollipop, it's all built around material design. So it is their new standard, just the same way that Polymer is their new standard for markup. Material design is their new standard for it. Basically, what I showed you was from their style guide. And so until their style guide is changed or updated, then yes. Maybe eventually they'll change, but I think some of the core tenets will stay there, like the z-axis. I think that a lot of the lessons learned from material design will change, will stay the same, but perhaps be updated as they learn more. But yeah, it's currently used in Android.
With Bootstrap, sometimes you see criticism because somebody just dropped Bootstrap and did nothing further to customize it. It's like, oh, that was lazy. But the material design seems to be a lot more opinionated and probably harder to apply your own look or brand to. Is it really essential to be used as is, or are there ways to customize it to your own branding and incorporate it?
You can use it some. There are some changes that you can make, but honestly, it's going to be more or less the same. Like, you can't take out things. I guess you could use things like ink, which is the effect that I showed you. Whenever you click on something, that it actually will swell. Things like that you could use. You can change the color schemes. You're not required to keep any of the colors. I think that the main takeaways are that the z-axis stuff will stay, and all of the like the user gestures will stay. But besides that, then yeah, you can change it however you want.
How long do you think before some of this stuff trickles into actual browsers?
So how long do I think? The question is, how long do I think it will take before this stuff trickles into actual browsers? So I'm taking it that you mean. So what do you define as an actual browser? Because Chrome has all of this. But I would say, okay, so IE6 has, excuse me, not IE6, IE8, 9, nothing's ever going to happen with IE6. I get laughs from IE6, but yeah, IE8, 9, those are going to be updated with Bosonic. So some of the older stuff, Bosonic is actually doing work on bringing some of the older stuff together to be able to support web components. Within the next year, I would say a lot of the stuff, the under review stuff for Internet Explorer will get rolled in. So I would say sometime in the next year to 2 years, like this will be fully rolled out, baked out all the way. Let's see. Yep. Well, we're an hour in. If you guys want to cut it 15 minutes short, that's fine with me. But I'll stay here as long as you want. So you can leave if you would like. If you have more questions, or if you have received Jonathan points, you may receive them from me.